was this swing from joy to, so continuing in that vein, Rabbi Ellen Liu of blessed memory Rabbi Ellen Liu of blessed memory writes that the High Holy Day season promises nothing less than total personal transformation if we do the work and if we pay attention. Each of us can leave these days as a different person than when we arrived. These days are supposed to work on our very souls. Once a year, our brilliant and ancient tradition offers us this opportunity to reflect on the past year and to consider what we need to do in order to become our best selves. I'm going to suggest today that if you are willing to take on 2 specific practices over these holidays, they can pave the way for deep renewal, not only for this year, but for your life. The very first undertaking is simple, but not easy. It is to acknowledge where you are right now. What lays heavily upon your heart? What preoccupies your mind? We all have something. In fact, we all have many things. But no conscious change happens without first sitting in the reality of what is. We can spend the year in denial, distracting ourselves, putting our heads in the sand, or being too busy to even look. When we do that, we close our eyes to the truth. Brené Brown writes, "The universe is not short on wake-up calls. We're just quick to hit the snooze button." However, we are lucky as Jews because once a year our tradition reminds us, enough with the hiding, Dayenu. I know that's the wrong holiday, but still, wake up. Look clearly at the condition of your life. And if we are still inclined to stay asleep, we have the shofar blast throughout the season to call us to attention. Wake up. And then, if we are willing to wake up, we need to be willing to sit with what comes up. We must allow our illusory, comfortable dream world to fall away and give permission to experience our unvarnished truth. We ask ourselves at this time of year right now, what disturbs us? What's unresolved in our life? Rabbi Liu puts it this way: what is the recurring disaster in our life? What is it that we persistently refuse to look at or fail to see? So we name it. We must name it. We examine our challenges, we lay them all out with open eyes and feel all the feelings. In this, we have the best role models for being real. Our ancestors, as described in our Torah, were very human and far from perfect, like us. My teacher, Rabbi Larry Kushner, likes to say that our ancestors were so real, you'd probably never want one of your children to marry them. For example, in the Torah portion we just read today, we see Sarah first bursting with joy at having a son after so many years of longing, only to be then overcome by jealousy and fear, leading her to be cruel and cast out her rival Hagar and her son Ishmael to die. And the question is, do any of these feelings evoke a place or a feeling that you are in. Next, we have Hagar in the desert, so distraught with the pain of her son Ishmael near death that she looks away and cries. What in your own life is unfair or deeply painful that you can hardly look at? Finally, there is Hannah, who comes to the temple in total despair because she too wanted a child so badly that in fact she promises God that if her prayer is answered, she would dedicate him for his whole life in service to the temple. Is there something in your own life that you want so deeply that it hurts? I love that our tradition doesn't sugarcoat the raw emotions that govern human life and the recognition that those realities can be transformed. The poet Mary Oliver writes, "Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine." A few months ago, aware that this year has been so painful to so many people in myriad ways, I asked on my social media and to my students, I asked this question: what keeps you up at night? Meaning, what are the primary concerns that you are sitting with right now? I received over 300 responses. Here are a few of them. A woman over 60 writes, "I've been working for years and saving money. I've got no pension, minimum social security. I'm afraid of the economy taking. How will I pay the rent?" A woman wrote me, I'm worried that even with always carrying a current passport in my purse for me and my son, we won't be able to get out of this country before it's too late. One man wrote me, "What keeps me up at night is the division between so many people, even in my own family, who otherwise have so much in common. Imagine what we could accomplish if we just loved each other." Another, "I'm concerned about global warming and the environment. The clock is ticking and we are doing almost nothing to stop it. We're supposed to repair the world, but instead we are destroying it. What are we leaving for our future?" One woman cried out, "Is anyone honest anymore? What about feeling safe and nurtured in your home, your school, and your place of worship?" Another, "What's on my mind is the increasing acceptance of gun violence and the normalization of our response, oh, another mass shooting. Also, the rise in levels of hate, including anti-Semitism." Lastly, one person wrote this, "The future of Judaism and our increasing tribalism stresses me. Really, everything. What's going on in our country. Women's rights being taken away in front of our eyes and me not being able to do anything about it. Worrying about my kids, worrying about others' kids, famine, genocide, homelessness. I really don't know how I sleep at all." As I said, it's been a hard year. The issues before us are both external and internal. Some of what troubles us is within us, our persistent thoughts and emotions, and some of it is external, outside of our control. Perhaps it's a family division or estrangement. Name it. Maybe you are distraught by the strife and corruption in our country. Say it. So this is number one. We must start where we are. As we sit here in the synagogue with the shofar blasting, ask yourself this question: What am I being called to wake up to? What am I choosing not to look at? In our most vulnerable places, it is also imperative that we know how to navigate when we're faced with despair or overwhelm or hopelessness or helplessness. How do we do this? How do we move even? I can feel just the response to just hearing these very real feelings of people like us. Well, our answer lies within the Torah portion we read today, which brings us to step 2, the other action we are asked to consider today. Let's go back to where Hagar and Ishmael are left to die in the desert. Hagar doesn't want to see the death of her son, so she puts him under a bush and averts her eyes and bursts into tears. God hears the cries of Ishmael, sends an angel to comfort Hagar, and the text says next, God opened Hagar's eyes. And upon that, she sees a well of water, which saves them both. The text does not say God miraculously put a well of water in front of her. It's not like when the people were thirsty and God told Moses to strike the rock, which he did, and miraculously the water flowed out. No, the miracle is that as she opens her eyes, she actually sees what is right there. We do the same thing as Hagar, don't we? We close our eyes because sometimes it's too painful to see. But when we do so, we shut ourselves off from seeing all that's right in front of us. Hagar has a transformation. Her vision is renewed. Their very lives are saved because of what she sees. And this is the second essential task that these holy days, especially Rosh Hashanah, comes to remind us. Open our eyes to the gifts right in front of us. Because we have to be able to hold both the reality of the truth of our lives and also the miracles. A few stories about how this works. My teacher, Rabbi Kushner, who I mentioned before, and I recently interviewed for my Hineni program, told me that some days he wakes up very sad. He doesn't exactly know why, but it's a real and pervasive feeling. So while laying in bed, he calls to mind each one of his grandchildren with a very specific memory about them that fills him with joy, almost immediately. He gave me a few examples. One is of his granddaughter, who squealed in delight at a ride at the theme park they took her to. Another was his grandson, who Rabbi Kushner let win at checkers and was absolutely beyond gleeful that he won. Rabbi Kushner was delighted even as he was telling me about these little tiny moments. He opens his eyes to his experience and practices, transforming his reality. He creates his own well of water. The other is my friend Mary Ann. Some of you may know her, who was recently run over by a car while she was walking and actually heard her back break. Twice, ran over her twice. Her ribs, knee, and shoulders were also fractured. So she tells me, when she's in the hospital, as she's laying on the ground, hearing the ambulance sirens in the background, vaguely knowing that they were probably coming for her, she remembered this simple morning ritual that I had taught in our local Hineni spirituality class on Friday mornings. I had suggested to everyone a few months prior that in the morning's first kind of glimmers of consciousness, to take a moment and wiggle your toes and appreciate just being alive, being given a new day. So, as Marianne was lying there, somehow listening to the sirens, somehow she remembered this and wiggled her toes. And she thought, oh, at least I can do that. Thank God, she said. I can tell you so many Marianne stories, but she is now out of the brace that she was in for 6 months. She's walking, she's driving. Yes, it's been a miracle, honestly. The real miracle is that throughout this ordeal, she has done these 2 practices. She understood and admitted from the first moment, and it was because it was so physical, she would say, I am broken. My back is broken. She said right out. And she practiced noticing even the smallest bits of good. Seeking the good sustained her as she recovered. We have to learn to hold both the sadness and the joy, the unpleasantness of what is, and with open eyes to look for blessings. Rabbi Nachman of Wrocław, the great Hasidic teacher from the 18th century, suffered what we think was bipolar depression, and remarkably, and this is one of the teachings that he has become known for, remarkably, it was he who taught, quote, find a little bit of good in others. Find a little bit of good in the world, and find a little bit of good in yourself. Opening our eyes to the good is a profound spiritual practice. And it's not a one-time thing, it is daily. Rabbi Kushner told me that his gratitude practice is a deliberate and conscious act that he does each and every day. So he has trained himself to notice what brings him joy. Rick Hansen, a leading neuroscientist who wrote Hardwiring Happiness, suggests that each day, or when you remember something good, stay with it for 20 to 30 seconds in a row. He says, that's how we give those neurons in our brains lots and lots of time to fire together, so they start, as he says, wiring together. So my challenge to you over the next 10 days, and hopefully you will do it for the rest of your life, is to do these 2 things. Number 1, take some serious time to think about and feel where you really are right now. What keeps you up at night? What do you find yourself concerned about or preoccupied with? Be honest. Write it down. Perhaps talk to a friend. I would love to hear even a few sentences. My cards are on the table, so you can email me. You can find me after services. So I can add you to the collection of the 300 responses. And number 2, starting today, starting right now, in this moment, notice the good. Look up. Open your eyes to what's in front of you. Collect the good. Gather your blessings. It really helps to write them down and savor them, even if it's as simple as being grateful for your morning cup of coffee or tea, one good friend, a good laugh. I'm going to end with a perfect example of holding both the stark reality of our despair and the practice of noticing the good, and it's in the Mary Oliver poem that I mentioned before. She writes, you do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. And so, a blessing for you this new year. May this be a year of seeking the truth in your lives, in our world, having the courage to stay with where you are, as well as building your ability to see even the tiniest bits of good. May this be a year